Well, hello humans. Um, Happy snowy, icy Sunday. I hope you're safe. The roads are nasty. Um, yeah, the roads are pretty bad right now. I had to go to the store right here on the house so we would have dinner tonight. Me and Jordan, Sister Scott's in Limestone. She's working from home and she's laid up with bum leg. She fell. Um, and then Kylie is traveling back from downstate, or I think she was out of state. So anyway, let me give you the text, and then I'll list some things off for you to be praying about. Our text is Proverbs 12:22. Proverbs 12:22. Yeah, pray for Sister Scott. She was coming into her office one morning this last week, and she walked into the door, and there's a rubber mat there at the door. But she had walked through snow and stuff, and when she stepped off the mat, I guess it was her left foot went out from under her, and she landed really hard on that right knee. She managed to get up and walk like 2 or 3 steps and slipped and fell and landed like basically flat on her back. And so the short of it is this: her knee is really bad. She's been to the emergency room. They're referring her to orthopedics. It looks horrible. It looks, purple and all kinds of crazy colors. And then she bruised her arm up pretty good too, and she bruised her ribs. So it's like she's been in a fight with a giant rock tumbler. So keep her in your prayers. Keep Kylie in your prayers as she travels back. My wife's family is also battling some illness. She has 2 aunts. They're up there in years. There'd be Sarah's siblings. Both of them are in the hospital. They were both on the brink. Looked like we were going to lose them both, on ventilators and all kinds of stuff. Well, they've come off those, but now they've got this long road of rehab ahead of them. So it's pretty bad. The flu. I don't think this is what hit her Aunt Ann, but the flu is probably what hit Willa Mae, because she lives with Sarah and Joanne and Doug, who all live in the house too. They've all got the flu. So keep them in your prayer. So pray for Janice's Aunt Willa Mae and Aunt Ann that they continue to recover after being at the brink of death. And then also for the whole household with Sarah and Joanne to get better. They all made it back home safely. Joanne made it back home to walk right into the flu. So, yeah. Anyway, we had a great visit last week. Well, it seems like it's longer ago now than that, or somebody's shorter than that. Time's weird when you get old, We did have a great time. In spite, I had a stomach bug, by the way, so I was out of work Monday. Or I actually had to leave work early Monday, and then I was out of work Tuesday because of protocols. If you have any kind of symptoms that could be COVID, you have to be out 24 hours with a negative, and have a negative test. It wasn't COVID. It was just an old nasty stomach bug. But I'm feeling fine now. I'm 100%. So anyway, we had a good time with the family over break, and yeah. So I hate we couldn't be together today, but these roads are bad. They are very bad. And hopefully, I told the cashier at the store when I was getting stuff for dinner tonight right here at Sable up behind the house, I was like, I hope this either it warms up and rains enough that it makes the roads totally clear, or it doesn't do it enough and it's just pretty much snow and we can scrape and work with it. But none of this stuff in the middle where it's a mixture of slush that turns to ice, and none of that stuff in the middle. So that's what I'm hoping. Anyway, Proverbs 12:22 says, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight. And our title today is Without Truth, No Foundation and No Future. Without truth, no foundation and no future. Lord, we love you today. We ask you to put your hand on the word. Let us hear it. Let us be made better by it. Put your hand on all those who are sick, who have battled sickness, COVID and other things. We just ask you to let them come through it and let everyone be fine. Put your hand on the challenges in Sister Elaine and Sister Teresa's families that some of their kids and grandbabies are facing. Put your hand, Lord, on all Sister Scott's family who's battling illness, and help her to get totally healed up and recovered from these bad falls she suffered on that tile floor. And bless this sermon in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. So without truth, no foundation, no future. Our text uses the word faithful. And we consistently use the word faithful to apply to whether someone is being loyal or disloyal in a relationship. And even when we say that, what we really mean is, are they really being, if it's a friendship, are they really being a friend, or are they doing something dirty behind your back? Are they colluding against you, or are they just, basically not supporting you somehow? If we're talking about a spousal relationship, has your spouse been faithful? What we really mean, are they breaking the marriage vow and committing adultery or something like that? But if we really look at this verse, so we talk about faithful to God, we are talking about, are we continuing to serve God? Are we not letting him down? Are we not sinning? Are we not, going back on our vows and things? So it's all in this context of, being faithful to the person, staying committed to the person. And while a relationship with the Lord is definitely a part of Proverbs 12:22, if we look at the structure of this sentence, it is not juxtaposing faithfulness against abandoning God. Those are the two sides of the equation in this sentence. It's not, are you faithful to God, or are you serving other gods, or are you basically forgetting about him and just doing your own thing in your own life? Are you abandoning the relationship to him? That's not the other side of the coin here. The other side of the coin from being faithful here is being a liar. Now, I want you to think about that. Are you faithful, or do you lie sometimes? Let's face it. A husband may commit adultery on his wife, but if she never suspects, he may not lie to her about it. He may never have to bring it up. A friend may be unfaithful to you and yet really don't care about you at all and never let on that they do, right? The act of lying is unfaithful in and of itself, even outside the bounds of any particular type of relationship or relationship expectations. I would say the idea of being faithful, there's a synonym for faithful, that is to be consistent, or in other words, to be consistently honest. In other words, consider the verse in the Ten Commandments that we say is a prohibition against lying. It's not worded lying. It's not thou shalt not lie. It's thou shalt not bear false witness. Think about that. In other words, you shall not provide a testimony that is untrue. That is intentionally untrue. So this idea of being faithful in Proverbs 12:22 is not just about whether or not you really still love God. No, it's that your words are consistent, that your witness is consistent, that you are consistently honest. You are faithful to the truth. There's not a point in your sentence where you're speaking true things and you're adhering. What are we talking about? And how does it connect to relationships? How is being faithful in your words? What does that mean? Well, the basis of a good relationship is what we call acting in good faith. In other words, if I am in a friendship with you, we have an understanding that friendship is based on both parties being committed to the well-being of the other and to maintaining the health and well-being of the relationship. and the parties in it. That's acting on good faith. If there's a party in the relationship, they actually participate in the relationship, they contribute to the relationship, and yet they're not acting in good faith because they're really in it just to get something out of it, then they are still being unfaithful because they're not acting in the benefit of all. It's not really about the relationship, it's about what they can get from it. This notion of being faithful is not just about, I stuck around, I never left your side. It's like, while you're there, could I trust you? Could I trust the words coming out of your mouth? Were you faithful to truth? Would one sentence be consistent with the facts, and the other sentence would be just, you really didn't care about the facts, but you just asserted that it was true and that you believed it was true? So being faithful is not just about relationships, it's what relationships are based on. And that's how all these components work. Faithfulness, relationship doesn't presuppose, faithful doesn't presuppose a relationship. It is the thing that relationships spring from. It's the basis for relationships. In other words, is a person faith? You need to be faithful in your words, even when you're not in a relationship, even when you're not talking within the context of a friendship, of some prior loyalty to a person or an entity. Your words should be faithful, trustworthy, consistently true, consistently honest. So Proverbs 12:22 is showing that. It's juxtaposing that if you are a person who doesn't deal in truth and doesn't try to deal in truth and doesn't care about the truth and whether something's true and whether or not you're being honest about that or not, sometimes we're unfaithful in our own thoughts and we lie to ourselves. We will say things that if we were to stop and examine them, we would have to admit, wait a minute, I really can't know whether that's true or not. I'm sitting here getting all worked up and getting bent out of shape, and I'm getting my dander up over something that if I really pulled back and thought about it, I really don't have a good reason to be so upset about it, to even buy into this notion. I can't assert and affirm that this is true if I really had to. And yet sometimes we'll have these things that we really want them to be true. And so when confronted about that and when having to face up to that, we're unfaithful to ourselves and we'll skirt over it. We'll look the other way. We'll deny it. We'll go take a nap rather than deal with it, than think about it. We'll go play a video game or go surf the internet or watch a TV show, or we'll go have a conversation about something totally different with someone else rather than have to think about it. We'll run from this inconsistency, this misalignment of facts that we think are true. We won't deal with it because we really want it to be true. We're being unfaithful to the truth. We're being unfaithful in our words, and frankly, we're betraying and denying our own growth and education and betterment. So being faithful in this verse is not just about, I'm committed to a relationship. It's I'm committed to truth. I'm committed to my words being consistently dependable. Proverbs 19:1 says, better is a poor person who walks in his integrity than one who is crooked in speech and is a fool. I am so glad. I'm not glad to call people a fool, but I'm glad that it included it in here. To have crooked speech, to be unfaithful in your words, is paired with being foolish. Why is that? Because a person who is crooked in their speech sees a twisted reality, and it affects even the way they see the world. Even when people are lying, to some degree, they're always going to be victims of their own deceit and their own denial and their own avoidance of true things. And they're made a fool of their own words. This whole situation happening overseas, everyone is so astounded at how much of a fight the Ukrainians have put up against what's supposed to be one of the preeminent military forces on the planet. And yet here's this little country who, instead of lasting 2 or 3 days and falling the way everyone suspected, here it is. We're going on weeks. This thing's lasting, and they're fighting, and we got a 40-mile convoy of Russian vehicles that are just stalled on the road. What's going on? They're running out of fuel, running out of food. They're running out of people because some of their own soldiers are abandoning them. What happened here? I'll tell you what happened here. You had someone crooked in speech at the top of that whole thing. And the more and more and more they wanted to believe and cherish this notion of their own domination and power, the less and less others around them could talk to him, Vladimir Putin in this case. And he's been shown, and then some estimations of what his military is capable of, and some estimations of what the world would and wouldn't do when it responded to him, and some estimations of just how committed his own people were to him being the grand Pumbaa and not really caring about their rights. He's being shown on some of those issues he's been a fool. Doesn't mean he's a fool we can take lightly, but he's been a fool. He's been totally wrong. Those Ukrainians are a lot more determined. They aren't going to just welcome you with open arms. Your own soldiers, they're not happy when they find out that they weren't carrying out exercises, but they were actually being, made to go across the border and shoot at people that they cared about too, frankly. All these things he underestimated, or he overestimated his capabilities and underestimated theirs, and frankly just had misnomers in his head about what was actually happening. Why? Because he buys his own fertilizer, for lack of a better term. He buys in the own stuff that he sells. Here's why truth is central. You cannot value justice without valuing the truth. You're never going to have any sort of fairness if you don't actually look at the facts. People's grievances, the ways they've been wronged, who's been wronged. You're never going to be able to deal with that as long as you don't have an honest and frank and open evaluation of what happened to them and who did it and how it happened and what the circumstances were. It takes truth to get to those things. So when you have people who start denying voices and not wanting to hear and trying to talk louder than, those people don't care about truth. They don't care about justice. They don't care about what's fair. You cannot value compassion if you don't value truth. Truth is frequently uncomfortable. The facts don't care about your feelings. The facts don't care about what you want. The facts don't care about who you thought ought to win and who you thought ought to lose. The facts don't care about any of that. The facts are just the facts. They're impersonal. They may feel personal to you. They may feel personal, but they're impersonal. And the thing about it is when you deny truth, you're saying, I don't want to have to deal with the hardness of the facts. I would rather not. And so by me covering it up and by me pushing it off, I'm forcing the opposite negative side of that fact. I'm pushing it away from me, and it's cutting into someone else on the other side of that push. You're pushing away those jagged edges of truth. Meanwhile, you're pushing it into the lives, into the hearts, into the flesh, into the future of some other party who says, I need you to be honest about these facts. Compassion requires dealing with hard truths. And until you deal with just how hard it's been on someone else and just how wounded someone else has been and just how diminished they've been and how many opportunities they've been denied, how they've been wrongly treated and tortured and punished and minimalized and marginalized, until you deal with those, you can't say you care about compassion. A lot of times people who want to say, well, I want to look compassionate, I want to feel like I'm compassionate without having to deal with facts. So what they do is they throw money at things. Well, I give to that charity. Well, I throw money here, Well, you can't, that doesn't mean you're really compassionate. That means you're mollifying your own conscience and that nagging voice in your head that's saying, hey, do you really know what pain other people are in? Have you really investigated whether or not that charity is doing good work? Have you really looked into whether or not people actually are being helped or how bad things really are? You're just silencing that voice in your head that says you're too caught up to care. And ultimately, because without truth there is no justice, and without truth there is no real compassion, that means wounded people and wounded groups persist. People without rights exist. People that are being hurt, and the ongoing injury, the ongoing ostracization, the ongoing unfairness, the ongoing injustice keeps up, because there is no justice without truth. There is no compassion without truth. So all the bad keeps operating underneath the radar. It keeps happening. There's been a lot of parallels drawn between what's going on over there in Ukraine and Russia, and what happened in the early days leading up to Nazi Germany, and how you had a dictator, you had someone bent on claiming more and more territory, more and more land, and everyone kept thinking and talking, say, oh, as long as we have agreements and we get his word, it'll be okay and it'll be everything fine. And no, you're going to have to deal with the hard truth that some people don't care about that. Some people really are just out to take. They're really bad people in power. And a lot of people say that's been the problem with why we haven't dealt with that situation earlier. It's because we just kept trying to think, well, we can mollify and keep working with him, and maybe he'll get into a mood to negotiate and use diplomatic things to understand our rights and our needs too. And he don't care about all that. He's given us no indication that he ever really cared about any of it. So if there's no justice because we don't value truth, and there's never real true compassion because we don't value truth, and that perpetuates ongoing abuses and problems and crimes and unfairness, that means there's no future without valuing truth, at least no future worth having. 2 Corinthians 8:21 says, for we aim at what is honorable, not only in the Lord's sight, but also in the sight of man. The first part of that verse I like. For we aim at what is honorable. Oh, that's wonderful. Good. That means maybe you care about truth. Maybe you care about integrity, like Proverbs 19:1 mentions. Maybe you care about honor. But if I read that verse, I'm hoping that as we got to the end of it, there was this little check in your spirit, a little red flag that went up. Said, whoa, wait. Did you catch it? Did you hear it when I read the end of it? For we aim at what is honorable, not only in the Lord's sight, but also in the sight of man. Ooh, I don't know if that's a high enough aim, Paul. I know of some things that have been honorable in people's sight that that wasn't a very high mark. There are some things that men consider honorable that are frankly travesties. They're horrible. They're unfair. They're dishonorable in my estimation. I have a higher standard than just the sight of men. You ever heard people say things like, well, it's true to me. This is what it means to me. That's just their truth. What in the world does that even mean? If truth is all just a matter of personal perspective and personal belief and whatever thing we want to believe because it makes us feel all warm and fuzzy, well, we're not talking about the word truth anymore, are we? The word truth has a particular definition. And it doesn't seem to be something that's bendable and malleable according to where you're standing and what you want things to be true. That's not what the word true means. When people say that sort of thing, they're using the word truth, and yet they actually mean an entirely different thing than what the definition is. Why do they do that? Why do they want to put truth on something that is frankly subjective and differs from person to person? This is true for me. This is my set of facts. You have a different set. Why do people want to compartmentalize that way and put the word truth, the label of truth, over the top? I'll tell you why. Because the word truth is a strong word. The word truth has a certain muscular quality to it. It brings with it a certain authority and expectation of objectivity and fairness and something that's above and beyond the little petty bickerings and differences of opinion so common to human dealings. They put the word truth on it because they want to climb up there where the word truth is and pretend that that's what they mean. But as they try to climb up and try to say, this is beyond reproach, you can't argue with me, this is truth, this is not up for discussion, the whole time they're not meaning objective truth. They're not meaning that which defies personal opinion and that which is consistently provable to be fact, even if I don't like it. They don't mean that, but they still want all the authority and hands off, you can't touch this meaning of the original word. We want the power of the word. We don't want the definition of the word. Suddenly, instead of the solid foundation that the word's definition, the truth definition holds, they've put that label over the box of their favorite Jell-O. Colorful, sweet tasting, but impossible to nail down. We instinctively purse our lips when someone says the words, my truth, because there are things embodied in truth that we know such statements violate. Here's what it takes to value truth, really. Not your truth, but just things that are true, regardless of whether you or me like it or not. You cannot value truth if you do not value honesty. If you tell me you really care about what's true, and yet you have a hard time admitting and facing up to uncomfortable true things, you don't value truth. You just know you ought to, and you say the words, so no one will press you on it. You cannot value truth without valuing accuracy. I've talked about this several months ago about people who like to say, oh, I like this person because they always tell the truth. And meanwhile, a lot of the truths they tell are clearly not true. But in the moment, they really thought them. And so what those people's definitions of truth is not things that are actually true. To them, honesty and telling the truth is just saying whatever garbage happens to be running through your brain at that moment. And you just flap your gums with no restraint, and they take this, they say it like it is. No, if you care about truth, and you care about accuracy too, not just saying the first thing on your mind and having no control over your mouth. Accuracy matters if you care about truth. That means sometimes before you speak and before you lean too far over the tips of your skis, before you start saying what you know and how you know it and insisting on it's good that you know something, you better check it out because it might not be true, even though it feels so right to you. You cannot claim to care about truth if accuracy, verification, confirmation, research, if you don't care about accuracy, you don't care about truth. By the way, one of these days we need to have lessons on how to do real research. It's not skimming the Facebook pages. It's not skimming Google for the things that sound right and seem to confirm and back you up on what you already think. If in your search for truth, you always seem to find things that confirm what you already held to be true, and even when it corrects you, it only corrects you, it makes you lean further in the direction you were already leaning, you don't know how to research anything, friend. You only know how to find metaphorical yes voices. You don't care about truth. We can't care about truth if we don't care about humility. And this connects to what I just said. A person who says they care about truth, and yet they always seem to be yelling and screaming about how bad and wrong everyone else is. Their supposed truth always seems to puff them up and make them beat their own chest. They don't care about truth. Because I want to tell you what, the truth hits everybody hard. Knowing the truth and caring about the truth has never made someone puff up and feel like they had the one thing everybody else ought to know. The more you know, the more you learn, the more you realize, holy cow, I don't know that much. The universe gets bigger and more mysterious and more elaborate and more multitudinous and more varied the more you learn about it. It's not a coincidence that our sciences, that we learn things in our sciences, that the methodologies, the process by which we confirm the things we learned in science, that as we've gone through the centuries, science has become more and more complex and harder to do. They've required more and more confirmation as they've gone. Now, if you make some discovery about how the world works, how physics works, how chemistry works, how biology works, you can't just say, hey, look, I had a couple of experiments and write it up and everybody says, oh, wow, he got it. Ooh. The more science learns, and it doesn't feel like this if you're on the outside looking in, if you're somebody who doesn't know beans about it and you only hear what the talking heads tell you about it. But the fact is the more we learn, the more science expands, the more humble it's become. If you listen to a scientist talk about his field or her field of expertise and what they're working on, first of all, you're going to be prepared to listen a while because it's complex. Second of all, you're going to hear them always couching it according to the research. I need to check this out more. Upon further testing, I think we might confirm. They're always couching like that. They're not standing up, beating their chest on some pulpit somewhere saying, we know this is true. This is the final word on. No, they don't believe that. They don't think that way. And so we have this elaborate process that they have to go through before we can accept a new truth in science, or, well, that's not even a thing, a new theory in science. What's going on? Well, it's got to be checked by other experts. It's got to go through a system of experimentation. It's got to go through more long, levels and phases of observation. It's got to be challenged. People, they don't try to prove it true. They try to prove it false. They try to find out where it fails. That's the way things rise to the level of scientific theory, is by going through a trial by fire of hard experimentation and observation where they're trying to pose tests that should make it fail. And finally, it makes it to the high level of theory, like the theory of gravity. Yeah, that's where gravity has made it finally to the level of theory, just like other theories, like the germ theory of sickness and illness. Germ theory is a theory. That's the highest level in science. And I love that. That means there's always humility there. It's just a theory, which means it can be modified and changed if we find more information that seems to confound what we thought we already knew. There's no value in truth without humility, because humility is the best position to learn from. I get a cocky, mouthy student in a classroom who can't be told anything. They want to do him badly. Why? Because they can't be told anything. It takes humility to come in. It takes humility. What is that old saying? Consider that everyone that you meet is an expert on something that you're not, that they can teach you something. That's a statement of humility. The more you understand, the more you realize you don't understand, the more you value learning. It takes longer to get to truth, the more you realize how much there is more to learn. So you're only going to get to truth by being humble and open and listening and taking it and accepting it even when we don't like it. So you can't love truth without humility. Finally, so far, You can't value truth if you don't value honesty. You can't value truth if you don't value accuracy. You can't value truth if you don't value humility. You can't value truth if you don't value epistemology. Epistemology. Epistemology is the study of how we know what we know. The methods by which evidence is collected impacts the kinds of evidence collected. I want you to think about that. The methods by which evidence is collected impacts the kinds of evidence collected. In a very practical way, if we consider in the field of science again, if we're collecting evidence from the cosmos and we're using telescopes, the kind of telescope we use determines the kind of heavenly bodies and their proximity and where they are, the light frequencies we can see. In other words, the kind of telescope used impacts the kind of cosmic evidence we can collect. If we think in terms of testing for disease, for instance, we have 2 or 3 different kinds of, maybe more than this, several different kinds of COVID tests, right? Some COVID tests are really good at detecting high levels of infection. Other kinds of tests are only good at detecting, well, maybe I got that backwards. They're good at detecting any infection, whereas other tests are only good at detecting if there's a whole bunch of COVID already in your system. That means they're not good. Some COVID tests are great for detecting Delta. Other COVID tests are not any good for collecting, the latest. I forget what the latest one is. Whatever kind of test you use, whatever kind of method you use to collect evidence affects the kind of evidence you collect. And those are all hard, science examples of what epistemology is about. You can't care about truth if you don't care about how in the world you're deciding what true is, because the way you arrive at truth determines what kind of things you would accept as true. And if your epistemology, your method for truth collection is, well, somebody told me, so it must be true. The kinds of evidence you've collected is a whole bunch of hogwash. There might be some truth all mixed up in there. There's all kinds of hogwash mixed up in there too. And you can't tell because your epistemology has you collecting all kinds of things that are hogwash, and hogwash confirms hogwash, and it all feels like it's true to you because your epistemology said this is how truth is collected. If your epistemology says, well, all my friends seem to agree with me on this, that means it must be true. You don't think large groups of friends have been wrong before about really big stuff? Everybody just knew, whoa, man, this is going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. All my friends say this can be trusted. This is true. My epistemology affirms that this is going to be a wonderful time. Let's all grab a ticket. Let's all get on board. This boat can't be sunk. Bam, iceberg, Titanic goes to the bottom. Your epistemology better be more than your friend group. You better care more about how you're collecting evidence, or you're going to collect all kinds of evidence that ain't really evidence. Not good evidence. It's going to be more evidence for your bad epistemology than it is for what's true. Evidence for how you chose foolishly instead of thinking wisely and carefully and slowly. How do you collect evidence? How do you affirm what's true? The methods affect what is collected. And therefore, if you have a bad method, a skewed method, a sloppy method, a method that you're basically unconscious of. Most people don't think about their methods and how they collect evidence and how they verify truth. They don't think about that. Majority of the population doesn't ever arrive at that. It's self-reflect enough and step back away from what they're saying and how they're getting there and how they're out of those conclusions and step back and say, how did they get there, and trace their steps backwards. They don't do that. We don't do that very much. And that means the majority of us could be using and probably are using bad epistemologies, using the wrong instruments that aren't really designed to collect truth. We're using mental processes that are designed to make us feel good in the group. We're using mental processes that are designed to make us feel safe and secure wherever we happen to be. We want to feel like we're a part of the group. We want to feel safe. And so we often, because we're unaware of our epistemologies and how we collect truth, we don't collect evidence of truth. We collect things that confirm, yeah, you're safe. We collect things that say, yeah, everybody likes you. You're okay. You must be right. No, there's no connection between being accepted in a group being right. Group acceptance has nothing to do with whether something's true or not. It just means everybody's getting along. Everybody's happy with each other. Nobody's rocking the boat. Sometimes truth rocks the boat. I mean, it rocks it hard. So we're using tools that aren't designed to collect truth to collect what we think is evidence and calling it evidence of truth. When in fact, it's just confirmations that I'm okay, you're okay, let's all smile and get along and pretend everything's rosy. You can't care about truth if you don't care about your epistemology. Where are you getting your information? How are you collecting it? How are you evaluating it? Are you measuring it for consistency? Are you measuring it against the known facts of the universe? Are you measuring it against the experts? Are you measuring it against experience? Are you double checking that the things you're accepting as true jive with against each other? We got people running around the world. They believe this and they believe that and this and that. If they put them in the same ring together, one would have to cancel the other out because they don't go. They don't jive. Bad epistemology. How you collect your proof determines the kind of proof you collect. Where you're willing to look determines what you're going to see. Let me say that again. Where you're willing to look determines what you're going to see. And just because you didn't look in the spots that were uncomfortable doesn't mean there wasn't stuff there that you needed to see. It just means you didn't see it. Without truth, there is no foundation. There is no future. I love you. Have a good day. Be harshly honest with yourself. Don't let yourself off the hook. Prize truth above all things. It's non-negotiable. Words matter. And when we get slippery with our words, we get slippery with the truth. And then everything gets slippery. We all fall down. Have a wonderful day. We will talk to you soon.